Welcome to Time of Death. I'm your host, Dee.
And I'm Riss. And if you're new here, welcome. We are two nurses that like talking true crime. We like focusing on cases that have a heavy medical influence to them, or cases that feature a medical professional as a perpetrator or a victim.
So tonight's case, we are going to be diving into one that is shocking and tragic, involving deceit, desperation, and ultimately brain death. Unfortunately, tonight's story centers around Felipe Hoyos-Foronda, a man who posed as a medical professional while performing dangerous and unlicensed procedures in the heart of New York City. An unknown 31-year-old woman, who again her identity remains protected, came to him for help. She sought out cosmetic surgery to remove butt implants, which is a very routine request that plastic surgeons get. People undergo this all the time. And, ultimately in the pursuit of altering their bodies, whether trying to be more confident, be satisfied with their appearance. But tragically, this decision would turn into a nightmare. In the world of cosmetic surgery, the stakes are very, very high. Many people, again, seek to alter their bodies for whatever their rationale might be. However, due to financial constraints, oftentimes turn to unlicensed individuals, or simply because they believe that the risks are manageable. But what happens when this trust is misplaced? And what happens when the person you trust to just do a very simple, everyday routine procedure turns out to be a fraud? So again, today we will dive in, and this was unfortunately and horribly, a woman is now brain dead due to one of these procedures going horribly wrong, all at the hands of an unqualified, fraudulent, so-called doctor. So it is a tale of deceit, danger, and ultimately the highest price that anyone could pay for a cosmetic procedure.
Of course, with cosmetic surgery, there are risks, just like there are with any kind of procedure or surgical intervention. You have, of course, your risks for infection, which is huge. You also have risks for things like seromas, which is just like pockets of fluid at the surgical site. You can have intense pain, nausea, vomiting, all kinds of side effects. You can also have very serious side effects or very serious complications as well. And also when you're, being operated on and you're under general anesthesia, there's huge risks as well that should be discussed with a qualified healthcare provider.
Absolutely, Riz. And I love how you use the term qualified healthcare provider, because this gentleman, or I don't even want to say gentleman, but this person, Felipe, was exactly the opposite of that qualified healthcare personnel. He was someone who was a snake oil salesman. Snails.
A snake snail.
Snaky snail.
He was such a sneaky snail.
That snaky snail. But he was a complete scam artist. March 28th, 2025 was a day that began like any other for this unnamed 31-year-old woman in New York City. She had decided to go to what, unbeknownst to her, was an unlicensed clinic in Astoria, Queens, to have a cosmetic procedure that many people would consider routine. After all, she had undergone butt implants surgery in the past, and that was totally fine. She got through unscathed, and now she wanted them out. Simple, right? Unfortunately, this decision would lead her into the hands of someone who wasn't a doctor at all, Felipe Hoyos-Foronda. Hoyos-Foronda was a 38-year-old man from Colombia who had managed to convince people in the area that he was a licensed medical professional, but the truth was far more sinister. He had no formal medical training, no license, and no business performing procedures that could potentially endanger someone's life. Operating out of his home in Astoria, he offered cheap cosmetic surgery to anyone that would come, promising results that were just too good to be true. So this young woman, desperate to get her implants removed, sought out Felipe, who she thought was a doctor. She didn't know that her life was about to change forever. And, he told her this procedure would be straightforward, would involve the use of lidocaine, which is a common local anesthetic used in minor surgeries. She trusted him, completely unaware that he had no qualifications to even be in the same room as someone doing this procedure. No medical training whatsoever for this individual, which is mind-boggling to me. And what followed next would be a tragic, life-altering mistake. Felipe administered the lidocaine during the procedure, but instead of the procedure being very routine, very minor, like everyone, including the patient, had expected, it became a deadly disaster. Lidocaine toxicity can occur when the substance is administered in excess or improperly, leading to complications like seizures, cardiac arrhythmias, cardiac arrest, and for this woman, unfortunately, it was the latter she ended up arresting. Felipe himself reportedly contacted 911 after the victim suffered a cardiac arrest. Then, the victim's friend, after she arrived at the clinic and learned about the situation from the landlord, she called the police. The landlord was aware of the incident and actually was the one who assisted authorities by providing crucial information about Felipe, leading to his arrest. The said information in question was a photograph of Felipe, along with his vehicle information, and the police used this information about specifically related to his vehicle and his license plate, were able to trace him or track him to the Van Wyck Expressway and apprehended him at JFK Airport as he attempted to board a flight to Colombia. So basically was trying to flee from the country at that point. Upon arriving to the scene, EMS discovered the victim completely unresponsive in a makeshift medical office within the home, equipped with items such as medical exam table, cosmetic injectable syringes, exam lights. This young woman was then rushed to Mount Sinai Queens Hospital, but unfortunately damage had already been done. By the time the medical staff was able to kind of assume care for the patient, they found that she had no brain activity whatsoever. She was intubated and doctors immediately noted signs of lidocaine toxicity. The young woman fought for her life in the hospital, but prognosis was very grim. As of April 3rd, 2025, the 31-year-old woman remains unconscious and is not expected to survive. Doctors have reported that she still, to date, has no brain activity. Just to clarify, when I say brain dead, that means that the brain has completely and permanently stopped working. Not just the thinking part, but also parts of the brain that control basic life functions like breathing. That's why when people are brain dead, they are on a ventilator because they can't breathe for themselves. Even if machines can keep the heart beating and oxygen going in, the person is medically and legally dead. There's no recovery from when someone is brain dead. And it's very different from being in a coma or a vegetative state. The family have been informed, and their loved one, who again went in for what should have been a simple cosmetic procedure, is now brain dead. Her life, her future, and her family's hopes and dreams for her have been shattered by a moment of misplaced trust.
It is surgery, so of course there are risks, but something that where you think, oh, it's routine, it's fine, like it's an easy procedure, and then for it to end this way is devastating. Especially, it's not even, it's not something you would consider to be a big risk during this procedure for a family or loved ones to think. It kind of like the Haley Akula case we covered last week, where it wasn't a true crime case, but we just had some medical significance to it. But she just went in for pregnancy, which is supposed to be like one of the happiest parts of your life, and it ended in, something devastating and unexpected. just goes, Haley had qualified healthcare providers caring for her. But this patient we're talking about today, she thought she had capable, licensed surgeons taking care of her, and it wasn't the case at all.
And what's really sad, especially sad, I think they're both very, very sad, but this could have been preventable, right? Lidocaine toxicity would not have happened in a scenario where it was a professional administering the medication. Or, I shouldn't say it wouldn't, but I think it would be far less likely to happen. This was an elective procedure. Yes, every time you go under, there's clear risks, whether it's stroke, heart attack, but something like this is clearly, I can't even say negligence because this person had no business practicing medicine. I think when I hear about cases like this, my heart just really aches for this victim, especially. You know, she was a young woman with dreams, aspirations, had family waiting for her. She's 31 years old. She's doing this, she's actually removing an implant too. So she's, maybe she had gotten the implants for confidence. Maybe now she was at a point where she was ready to have them removed. So I think that it's very tragic because, just one simple action, just misplacing your trust once was enough for her to really pay the ultimate price. So I think that's really, really tragic. And it brings us to a much larger issue in the world of cosmetic surgery, especially with the rise of social media, where doctors and cosmetic experts promote services with little regulation and even less accountability. In this case, the victim turned to someone who presented himself as a licensed professional, a doctor, but his actions tell a very, very different story. And Felipe's fraudulent practice is just one example of the dangers people face when they turn to unlicensed practitioners. He operated this so-called clinic without proper qualifications, without any type of oversight, which is terrifying, and with a complete disregard for the consequences. He, had a plan in place, clearly, that he would flee to Colombia and leave the country. He was not a doctor. He was a criminal masquerading as someone who could change people's lives, but for a price. So I really think we have to take a step back and think about the bigger picture here. In the world of cosmetic surgery, there's often an overwhelming pressure to look a certain way. People pursue these procedures, altering their appearance for a variety of reasons. It might be insecurity, it might be pressure from peers, or even just a desire for self-improvement for their own self. But when does it go too far? That's my question. When do we stop trusting those who present themselves as professionals and take a step back to really think about the risk? Because the risks are there and they are significant. This woman, who again, her identity is kept confidential, sought to have her implants removed because she was no longer happy with them. She trusted the wrong person, and now her family has to prepare for the unimaginable. As we know, many people are left with lifelong consequences when something like this happens. I don't know how many. There's a whole show, TV show, Botched, about people who have plastic surgery and it goes awry. And those are, again, lack of a better word, they're cosmetic botches. We don't talk about the medical botches like cardiac arrest, stroke, MI. Anytime you go under anesthesia, anytime you have a procedure, there are risks. So the lifelong consequences, again, are not always just physical. Sometimes it's their health. And they don't always get their health back. In the families of victims like this, the scars are permanent, those emotional scars. What do you think about plastic surgery risks? What are your opinions?
I think it's your body. You can make your decision to do whatever you want with it. But I do think, there needs to be a lot of education surrounding the risks. And I think a lot of people, like I said earlier, just kind of might think that it's an easier procedure because it's not, medically necessary.
Well, you look how casual it is now. I don't know how many health clinics there are, wellness clinics that are doing like filler. And even filler is a procedure, right? filler, there's people who have bad reactions to even just filler, never mind the anesthesia, the lidocaine. That's just, an injection, and people can have horrible outcomes with it. So I think it's just something to bear caution and definitely think about. And think informed consent is crucial in this. You need to know all of the risks and all of the benefits and decide personally if it's worth it to you. And of course, from qualified actual medical personnel. So what does justice look like in this case? Well, Felipe is facing multiple charges for his actions. He was arrested and charged with practicing medicine without a license, manslaughter, and other various charges. But for the family of the victim, no amount of justice will ever bring their loved one back. And it brings us to an important question. How do we hold people accountable for offering life-altering procedures without the necessary qualifications? Just charging him practicing medicine without a license just falls flat. I think it's also important to, go in informed. Have someone advocating for you. Not everybody, your advocate doesn't need to be someone with a medical background either. It just needs to be another set of eyes. Ideally, it would be someone who's a medical professional, but it doesn't always need to be the case. And also, don't overcorrect. Don't go to the other side of things where now you're worried about everything and diagnosing yourself. And I say this laughing because I do that. I do that. I'm very guilty of that. While I thought I had aseptic meningitis. Did not. I had pneumonia. It's hard. You have to, go in and advocate for yourself, and there are resources that, look up. Is this someone who holds a medical license? You can look up anybody's license online, and that's just a fun fact. Whatever your state is, there's a licensing organization you can go to. You can make phone calls. Of course, it depends, but there are resources available that you can use to verify someone has a license. But it's so sad that it even gets to that point, because you should be able to trust if someone says that they're qualified, that they are really qualified. But it's more and more common that that's not the case.
Yeah, unfortunately, just trusting. If you have any question about the validity of someone who's treating you, then you can always double check and look into it a little more, not only for peace of mind, but also for your safety. Because unfortunately, there are people who do these things that, are selfish and self-motivated. And in today's day and age, you need to look out for yourself.
Absolutely. Well said. And, the financial motivation it's very real. I wanted to make sure that Riss said her piece, because I absolutely agree. But just getting back to how can I really make sure that this guy is an actual doctor, or guy or gal is an actual doctor? There are state medical board websites where you can type in your state medical license lookup. Again, you can do that, and that is a free resource. There's also a site called DocInfo, www.docinfo.org, and that will give you the license status, board certifications, any type of disciplinary actions, which I think is awesome. So another good website and resource to use. You can also use the NPI registry, which is the National Provider Identifier Registry, npiregistry.cms.hhs.gov. You can search by name to see if they're a registered healthcare provider. You can also look up board certifications at certificationmatters.org. And, you can always say, where did you go to med school? And you can look up that way too. But these are just some actual ways to verify what you're being told is true, because anyone can parade, unfortunately, as anyone. And, those checks and balances, this is how you check. Again, it's important to keep in mind we live in a world where anyone can present themselves as an expert. Most people are not actual experts. They can set up shop, whether it's in their home, advertise on social media, which a lot of people do, take advantage of people's desire to, present a certain way.
Wasn't he out of his home?
Yes. Hannibal Lecter also set up shop in his home, but it's funny. Unless we raise our voices and demand regulation, this won't be the last time we hear about a situation. This won't be the last time we hear about a situation like this. Any final thoughts, Riss?
No, just a little tidbit of information. Lidocaine is also used during cardiac arrest. I think they took it away like with the ACLS guidelines and then they reinstated it, but you can use it for like VFib, VTAC. My hospital, I don't think I've ever used it for cardiac arrest, but I know we have the option to.
Is that administered IV or injected?
That is given IV.
Interesting. I have some lidocaine in my ear right now. That was my primary concern when they told me they were going to give me lidocaine. But don't be like me. Don't overanalyze. Don't overthink. I had to be NPO at midnight, and I asked Riss very seriously if me swallowing my spit was going to cause me to aspirate. So don't be like me.
Just, she's psych, so.
Please, Riss, am I gonna die? I swallowed my spit, and I'm worried I'm gonna aspirate when they intubate me.
You know, it's like with health anxiety, I feel like thoughts like that are common. But, you know, it's fine to swallow your spit the day of your surgery.
Never ever feel it.
What?
I never felt it.
I was terrified.
Most people don't because they're not able to be, you know, they're a little more rational thinking.
A little bit.
With, you know, but when you have health anxiety, you stop being so rational and you kind of think, what if, like with every little thing.
We were in the car. I asked you, and Mom was like, oh my God, I never even thought of that. And Riz goes, it's just the anxiety talking. It's not deep.
Well, you know what? Your surgery went well, so.
It did. But I thought, wow, how appropriate. Because I looked up the doctor. This is the same doctor that did Riss's tonsil surgery. And I still looked him up.
That's really just cautious.
Yeah.
Still looked him up.
You know,
Riss had a great outcome. Still looked him up.
It's just anything for peace of mind. It'll just give you peace of mind. And so it's worth doing.
We can't end this episode without a reminder. Always do your research when you choose a healthcare professional, whether it's a cosmetic surgeon, general practitioner, or even a therapist. Don't let desperation cloud your judgment. Look for board certifications, reviews, and recommendations from trusted sources. And if something doesn't feel right, trust your gut. We'll continue to follow this case closely as it develops. Felipe's trial will be one to watch and see whether or not justice is truly served in this tragic situation.
Dee, great job tonight. That was a very interesting case, and I haven't heard of it. And great job.
I sent it to you.
Okay.
That's how I know you don't check your texts. I sent it to you, didn't I?
I knew you would talk to me about it anyway, so.
Oh, okay.
Why look? Look if I know what's coming? But I think you did a great job discussing, you know, how to advocate for yourself. And I think that's it.
I think that's it too.
So, do you want to call it, Dee?
I'm going to call it. The time is 19:28, but 7:28 for all you non-military, non-medical folks. Thanks for joining in. I hope everyone has a safe and good weekend.
Also,
or week.
We're back on schedule.
First was in Las Vegas.
I was in Las Vegas. I was on a little vacay.
Vacay? In the...
Cité?
Cité? In Nevada?
Anyways.
Is it for Nevada?
Yeah.
Oh. I was just guessing. I was like 90% sure.
Yeah, it's Nevada.
Nevada?
Anyway, we're going to go now.
All right. Good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.